Accumulating 5 billion spectators worldwide, 10,000 participants, and billions of dollars, the Olympics are one of the biggest events in today's society. Everyone has seen the famous Olympic rings, and almost all of you have probably watched, heard of, maybe even dreamed of about being in the Olympics one day. I'm no different. I love watching the Olympics. Whether it's summer or winter, it doesn't really matter. Watching the best in the world battle it out in their sports is one of my favorite things to do. It's truly an amazing spectacle. Although the Olympics is one of the most famous events in the world, I believe that the history is just as interesting and very important as well. The origin of the Olympics is very important, as well as the death and rebirth. All these things had to happen in order for us to get the Olympic Games that we know and love today. That brings us to the beginning of the Olympics. The first games took place way before the games we know today, and they were very different as well. According to the Ashmolean Museum website, the games started in 8th century BC in ancient Greece. These games were made to honor the gods of their time, especially Zeus. These games were extremely religious, as that was the point of the games, was to honor their gods. And so they were built on sacred grounds, and sanctuaries is where they held the games, and often animals were slaughtered as sacrifices to the gods for the games. Winning the games brought large social status to the winners. They were loved by the people, they were adored, and oftentimes statues were made in their honor, much like the one you see pictured there. These statues could have been put in the sanctuaries where they fought or placed in the hometowns of the winners. Like the games we know today, it took place every 4 years and featured multiple sporting events, but they were very, very different. One big difference was the fact that these Olympics featured no women. Women were not allowed to participate, and oftentimes, most of the time, they weren't allowed to watch either. A part of this was because a lot of the games were played either naked or shirtless or losing clothes. You can see in the statue there that he's not wearing a shirt. This is because the Greeks really admired good bodies. The athletes put a lot of work into keeping their bodies toned, and the Greeks admired that. So in statues, they pictured them without clothes, and they let them compete without clothes as well. These games were a major success, but unfortunately, they would end up dying, but not for long. Around 400 AD, the games were shut down. The reason for that was this guy, Theodosius. He was the leader at the time, and he was extremely Christian, so he banned all worship of gods other than his God. The games were included in that because they were made to honor the gods. The International Olympic Committee says in their article that a lot of the sites and sanctuaries that were so beautiful where these games were unfortunately lost too, due to neglect and natural disasters and stuff like that. Origins.edu says in an article by John and Margaret Gold, they talk about the rebirth of the games. They say that in 1896 in Athens, Greece, where the original games took place, 14 countries got together to compete in the games in a series of events. 50,000 people were in attendance, which was really good for the time, and there were a lot of older games like in the original games, like wrestling and running, archery, shooting, stuff like that. But new games like tennis and cycling were incorporated as well. The games were back and they would stay this way, and people were excited about it. These games were very good and exciting, but they weren't like what we have today. They weren't even really that close. The first difference between those games and the modern games that we know and love today is the scale. Today, like I said, billions of people watch the games, which is a lot more than 50,000, and there's people all over the world watch. The Olympics are all over social media. It's practically unavoidable while it's going on, and there's television coverage of every event, and the opening ceremony is covered as well. It's a huge event for people, and everybody can watch it. Another big difference is the money. The 2024 Paris Olympics gave billions of dollars. According to Statista.com, golfer John Rahm from Spain made $210 million from competing in the Olympics, and LeBron James of America wasn't far behind with $130 million. In my opinion, that's a little bit better than a statue. The ancient games were made for religion, so how can these games compete in terms of intensity? I think it has to do with the pride of the country. People are playing for their country, and that's what makes it as intense as the ancient games were. A good example of this is Scottie Scheffler. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a golfer. He's extremely laid back, but after he won gold, he was seen crying on the podium when the national anthem played because he really cared about his country, and it was a huge accomplishment for him. The Olympics are completely unavoidable, but I think the history is just as interesting and as important, and I love learning about it. From the ancient Greeks fighting for their gods, to the abolishment and return of the games, and eventually the games we know and love today, the Olympics have changed a lot, but they've always been a huge part of society. The best representation I have of the profoundness and popularity of the games is the story of Matthias Steiner, who's pictured here. He was a German weightlifter who made a promise to his wife before she tragically died in a car accident that he would win a gold medal. In 2008, he miraculously hit a PR and won gold and broke out into emotion, crying and hugging his coaches. Later, he was seen there on the podium holding a picture of his wife, wearing his flag, and he had gold around his neck. These athletes are playing for so much more than themselves, and that's why we tune in every 4 years, and that's why we truly cannot get enough of the Olympic Games.